at least 21 years of age unless military, fully qualified under applicable federal and state law to purchase a handgun and of sound mind, and may not be a convicted felon, a fugitive from justice for a Class A or B misdemeanor or felony, chemically dependent, delinquent in state or local taxes, delinquent in child support payments, or restricted under a protective order or subject to a restraining order affecting the spousal relationship. In addition, a person must have at least 10 hours of classroom and gun range training and must pass both a written exam and a handgun proficiency examination. Even individuals who have met these standards, however, are currently prohibited from carrying their concealed handguns into buildings on college campuses in this state. This law, drafted to create gun-free zones, has the effect of disarming the law-abiding citizen, leaving him or her vulnerable to the deranged criminal who, without regard to the law, enters a campus with a gun and opens fire. These situations are, of course, thank God, very rare, but they do occur. We saw it at Virginia Tech and even here in Austin, Texas. I filed Senate Bill 354 this session, almost identical to my Senate Bill 1164, which passed the Texas Senate in 2009, because I want both to put doubt in the mentally deranged person's mind and give the law-abiding citizen a reasonable means of defense beyond just attempting to duck and hide. As of today, 13 of my Senate colleagues have joined me in co-authoring this bill, and 85 members of the House of Representatives have co-authored Representative Joe Driver's very similar House Bill 750, which was reported favorably out of committee a couple days ago. This legislation has received a great deal of media attention, and much of what has been reported has been either inaccurate or misleading. First and foremost, this bill primarily affects adult faculty, staff, and visitor parents, not students. Unless you're in the military, you must be 21 years or older to obtain a CHL. If you're a traditional freshman, sophomore, or junior, you're 17, 18, 19, or 20 years old and will not qualify for a CHL under this requirement alone. In 2010, just last year, only 7,399 out of 102,133, or a little over 7%, of Texas concealed handgun licenses were issued to qualified individuals aged 21 to 25, the group closest to college-age students and actually more representative of the average age of graduate and law school students. We can, I believe, infer from these statistics that passage of this legislation will not result in large populations of armed undergraduates. It's the non-traditional students, adults returning to school after years in the workforce or time spent serving our country overseas, as well as the adult faculty, staff, employees, and visitor parents I mentioned before, who are CHL holders that are much more likely to benefit from passage of Senate Bill 354. Members, Chapter 46 of the Penal Code lists several locations where carrying a concealed handgun is prohibited. This bill does not preempt those prohibitions. This bill will not result in guns in bars or in churches, even if they happen to be on some campus. An amendment to be offered by the chairman will ensure this for hospitals, both publicly and privately owned. Handguns will continue to be prohibited at collegiate sporting events, though the bill does include a provision that asks colleges and universities to post those prohibited locations in order to enforce such bans. What Senate Bill 354 would do is twofold. First, it prohibits colleges and universities from adopting administrative regulations that ban CHL holders from carrying a concealed handgun on campus. Private colleges and universities would be allowed to opt out of this restriction after consulting with students, faculty, and staff. I believe this is consistent with how the concealed handgun law allows private businesses to post a 30.06 sign to prohibit licensees on their premises. The bill allows public or private institutions to establish regulations governing any appropriate storage of handguns in dormitories. It also includes limitation of liability language in the event there are damages that result from a concealed handgun licensee on the premises. Both of these provisions, however, are modified slightly by a committee substitute that I would ask to be set up at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Huffman sends up the committee substitute for Senate Bill 354. Is there a movement adopted that
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Members, the committee substitute differs in this way. It allows regulation regarding the storage of handguns in dormitories alone rather than dormitories or other residential buildings. This would restrict regulation to true dormitories instead of including apartments or other types of residences. The committee substitute also defines campus as, quote, all land and buildings owned or leased by the institution of higher education, unquote. With regard to immunity, the committee substitute clarifies that immunity will be available to all public universities, but only those private universities that do not choose to adopt rules regulating the carrying of concealed handguns on their campus. Finally, the committee substitute corrects the drafting error that omitted passenger transportation vehicle of an institution of higher education from the places that CHL holder may choose to carry a handgun. Members, this bill is a matter of personal protection. The idea that it will result in any increase in violence is unfounded. Some of the same misguided predictions were used by opponents of the original concealed handgun legislation in 1995. I was here then, and I remember Senator Patterson introducing this bill, and we had people saying, in good faith, they really believed it, but they said, my God, if we pass a concealed handgun license law in Texas, we're going back to the wild, wild west. We'd have blood in the streets. We'd have shootouts at four-way stop signs. Well, the legislature respectfully listened to those remarks, but chose to pass the bill anyway. The governor signed it, and we've seen none of those predictions come true. In fact, the crime rate in Texas has decreased in the last 15 years, and some law enforcement attributes at least part of that decrease to the fact that for the first time, the bad guys suddenly don't know which of the good guys might be armed. We've had the CHL program for over 15 years, and licensees have proven consistently that they are law-abiding and responsible. I would also point out that 23 states with concealed carry laws do not prohibit the possession of firearms on post-secondary school campuses. And the Federal Gun-Free School Zones Act, which prohibits the possession of firearms within 1,000 feet of a school, already exempts concealed carry permit holders. While this law applies only to elementary and secondary schools, it's clear that Congress has made a concrete policy decision that individuals licensed to carry by the state in which they live are to be trusted in environments where even younger students are educated. Again, Mr. Chairman and members, this bill is a matter of personal protection. My worst fear is to wake up one morning to headlines that there's been a mass shooting on a Texas college campus that might have been prevented or limited, and someone had the ability to fight back. The goal of this bill is to make campuses safer by giving individuals on campus the ability to protect themselves.
Any questions, Wentworth?
I was interested to hear about the provision concerning private colleges. Now, I think if my math is close to right, about 90% of students in Texas are public universities. That sound right? 92%.
I don't know the percentage. I really don't.
I think it may be just, let's say, just 90-10. So you're going to give the private universities the ability to opt out.
I prefer not to, Mr. Chairman. That was not in my original bill 2 years ago. But in order to get that bill out of committee 2 years ago, that was a concession that I made. As you and I both well know, it's a process of give and take. I don't value the lives of private college students any less than public colleges. I would rather they all be, the law apply to all of them equally, but that's the way I.
Well, would you accept an amendment to let the public universities opt out?
No, sir. Well, I would not, for the very same reason. I'm trying to protect all college students, regardless of whether they're in public or private institutions. If it were up to me, I'd add private institutions back in and not give them the option to opt out.
So you want to accept that as a friendly amendment?
It wouldn't be a friendly amendment.
Well, it'd be a fair amendment, though. Wouldn't you say? I mean, if one of my kids goes, if a kid goes to Trinity, people won't be able to carry him. But if they go to UTSA, then they will be able to carry him.
That's right. So that if some deranged person comes on campus at Trinity, still be able to mow down defenseless, unarmed, vulnerable kids. But goes to UTSA, he might be stopped in the very first classroom if the professor or a graduate student who happens to be carrying a concealed weapon.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I have a question the amendment. I'm gonna have a friendly amendment to make the teacher conference.
I've read the amendment, Mr. Chairman, and it's accepted.
Let me go ahead and clean it up.
That'd be fine.
I'm gonna offer up amendment number one. It makes the bill consistent with what was passed out last session. It treats teaching hospitals the same way current law treats other hospitals by allowing them to prohibit the handguns. I want to be specific in my intent that the hospitals affected by my amendment are MD Anderson, the hospitals operated by UT Southwestern, which are Southwestern Medical Center,